Have you ever questioned the thing you call yourself? A Course in Miracles. Self versus self-concept. Imagine arriving in a city that had never been visited before. The streets are unfamiliar. The buildings are unfamiliar. The sounds are unfamiliar. Nothing means anything yet. Then someone quietly walks over and places a pair of headphones over the ears. A voice immediately begins speaking. Turn here. This matters. Be careful around those people. This is success. This is failure. This is attractive. This is embarrassing. This is intelligence. This is weakness. This is your personality. This is your value. This is your trauma. This is your role. This is who you are. At first, it sounds harmless, helpful even. The voice seems to explain the city. But after years of listening, something strange happens. The person no longer hears the narration as a voice. The narration becomes identity. That is the self-concept, not the self God created, the narration about a self. That is why this section of A Course in Miracles is so psychologically devastating. It is not merely questioning behavior, it is questioning the narrator itself. The Course says the learning of the world is built upon a concept of the self, adjusted to the world's reality. That means the world does not merely teach survival. The world teaches identity. The headphones are already on before conscious memory fully forms. Parents narrate. Teachers narrate. Religion narrates. Television narrates. Politics narrates. Culture narrates. Trauma narrates. Social media narrates. You're smart. You're difficult. You're attractive. You're awkward. You're successful. You're broken. You're special. You're a victim. You're a survivor. You're better than them. You're less than them. And eventually the person says, "That's just who I am." But the Course interrupts the entire guided tour with one terrifying possibility. What if the thing being narrated was never the self at all? That is why the cloud around this section matters so much. World, self, concept, made, face, brother, innocence. This chapter is exposing the architecture of identity itself. Not identity as society defines it. Identity as the ego manufactures it. The Course says, concepts are learned, they are not natural. That line alone dismantles almost the entire psychological structure of the world. Because if something is learned, then it is not eternal. If it is constructed, then it can collapse. If it is made, then it is not what God created. That is one of the most important distinctions in all of A Course in Miracles. God creates. The ego makes. The ego is a manufacturer of interpretations. It does not create reality. It narrates over reality. Like the museum audio tour, the voice keeps assigning meaning to everything. This matters. This hurts. This defines you. This threatens you. This proves your worth. This proves your failure. And eventually the narration becomes so deeply fused with awareness that the person begins defending it. That is where the self-concept becomes terrifying. Because now the narration reacts as if it were alive. The made-up identity says, "You disrespected me. You embarrassed me. You ignored me. You betrayed me. You made me feel small." Think about how insane that really is. A conceptual fabrication begins defending itself as though it were an actual living entity. An image becomes offended. A narration becomes insecure. A costume begins demanding protection.
That is the entire psychological world. People destroy relationships over narrations. Families collapse over narrations. Wars are fought over narrations. Entire identities are defended, protected, promoted, compared, worshipped, and avenged. And the Course quietly asks, who exactly is being defended? The section says the self-concept wears the face of innocence. That is one of the deepest lines in the entire chapter, because the ego does not present itself as obvious evil. It presents itself as wounded goodness. The narration says, I'm trying my best. I'm a good person. I've been hurt. People misunderstand me. I deserve better. I only reacted because they attacked me first. That is the face of innocence.
But beneath that face is accusation. The self-concept survives through blame. That is why the section repeatedly brings up brother. Other people become mirrors, reinforcing the narration. One person says, you hurt me. Another says, you betrayed me. Another says, you never saw me. Another says, you made me this way. And the headphones continue narrating. See, this is who you are. The world becomes a giant hall of mirrors where everybody keeps confirming everybody else's costumes. That is why people defend suffering, because suffering became part of the guided tour. The self-concept says, without this story, who would I even be? And the Course quietly answers, exactly. That is the doorway. Not knowing what you are terrifies the self-concept, because the self-concept is the narration. The self-concept would rather suffer than disappear. That is why people cling to pain they say they hate, because at least familiar suffering still confirms the identity. The headphones may hurt, but the silence beneath them feels like death to the narrator. That is why the Course eventually leads to one of the most honest lines ever written. I do not know the thing I am. The ego hears annihilation in that sentence. The Holy Spirit hears freedom. Because truth cannot enter a mind already convinced it knows what it is. The self-concept says, I know myself. The Course asks, do you? Not intellectually, actually. Strip away the narration, strip away the labels, strip away the history, strip away the roles, strip away the achievements, strip away the grievances, strip away the personality, strip away the image, strip away the story. What remains? The world immediately rushes to answer that question because silence threatens the entire structure. So the headphones stay on. Constant noise, constant interpretation, constant identity maintenance. Become someone, improve yourself, defend your image, protect your role, perform your value, maintain your story. But the Course is not interested in spiritually improving the self-concept. It is interested in exposing that the self-concept was never the self God created in the first place. That is why salvation in this section is not described as self-improvement. It is described as the undoing of concepts. Not becoming a better museum character, not upgrading the audio narration, not creating a more attractive identity. Removing the headphones. And for a moment, perhaps terrifyingly at first, there is silence. No narration, no role, no performance, no conceptual self explaining itself to itself. Just awareness without description. And that silence feels uncomfortable to the self-concept because the self-concept is made of narration. But beyond the narration is something the Course calls the self. Not a personality, not an image, not a role in the world, not a concept, not a story, not a psychological costume stitched together from memory, comparison, fear, and learning. The self does not need narration, because the self was never manufactured. And that is why this section does not end with certainty about identity. It ends with the collapse of false certainty. I do not know the thing I am. The world hears failure in that sentence. The Holy Spirit hears the headphones finally beginning to loosen.